Kakank. I did it again. Kakank. Damn it. Yo, welcome back to Pencil to Pencil. I'm JAMAR NICHOLAS. We're live. Welcome. The energy. Good night. That was great. The energy is palatable tonight, guys. Welcome back to Pencil Live. If you see three expert cartoonists on your video scope at the same time, that means it must be Wednesday. It must be 8 p.m. EST. It must be Pinch Me. I must be dreaming. Time for your favorite creative live cast. Well, hello. I'm your first host. I'm JAMAR NICHOLAS. I wear many hats. I am on the board of the National Cartoonist Society. Yes, that Cartoonist Society. Thank you very much. And also the Philadelphia chapter chair. I am also a cartoonist on top of all of that with a series at Scholastic underneath the graphics imprint. You've heard of Dog Man, right? That's
you?
No, that's not me. That's Dave Pilkey. But we share a seat on the bus. Leon Extraordinary is the name of my series. The newest volume is out. Leon, Worst Friends Forever. Get it wherever books are sold. Thank you very much. Guys, I would be remiss if I did not introduce my co-host, cohort, and co-conspirator. He is the Bill Bixby of webcomics, walking up the internet superhighway.
Cramps. Walking off the stitches.
With a melodic piano tinkle behind him. He is my good friend. Like that. He's my good friend, Stone Cold Steve Conley. What's up, Steve Conley?
Gentlemen, so good to see you. Thank you for acknowledging my melodic tinkling. My name is Steve Conley. I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age, which you can read at middleagecomic.com. You can also check it out on Tapas and the Webtoons and the Go Comics and all those other places. I also make the TTRPG stuff, stuff for your Dungeons and your Dragons.
I love it.
But I would be remiss. Also, I've been watching a ton of sumo wrestling lately, so I'm gonna, Mike, your intro just got changed up. The Yokozuna of webcomics to the mere Sekiwaki and lower ranked Jurial sumo of comics, Mr. Mike Manley.
Wow.
There you go.
You get to throw the salt. I love it. There's a lot of salt on this show. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Okay. Mike Manley, a 40-year veteran of comics and animation and all things drawn, and currently doing Judge Parker and the Phantom and some secret projects. But I wanted to show what I got in the mail today.
What you get?
This is our little pencil to pencil
unboxing.
Fresh. Has that China printed smell.
Wow, that's fresh out the wrap. Wow, wait, Atlas Artist Edition #2.
It is the basically it's the Marvel stuff that Al Williamson did with Stan Lee back in the 50s.
Wow.
So
let's see that side piece. It's thick, huh?
Oh. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic.
From Fantagraphics.
Oh wow, look at that. Oh, it's all in color, or
yeah. So I saw this the other day, and I thought, I should pick up. I remember seeing some of this stuff. Oh, here you go. Here's a classic Williamson spread.
Wow,
it's gorgeous.
So
now, Mike, are these kind of like color reprints? Meaning, like, did they punch the color up, or is that as close?
I think what they did is they scanned them, and then they did a lot of cleanup in Photoshop, because a lot of these, if they're on pulp, and I'm sure that they didn't. They've done that on the Kirby stuff too. There's some Kirby reprints from the 50s. So I thought, these would be pretty cool. These old cowboy stories that he did. Some of them he teamed up with Angelo Torres.
Mm.
And he told me that they would, kick these things out pretty quickly. So sometimes they would sit there and cut the pages apart.
Mm-hmm.
He'd ink a panel, and Angelo would be inking a panel, or they'd work on them upside down, one sitting here, one sitting there.
Oh wow, kind of like the Pac-Man machine at Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Either side of the table, working on that.
Yeah. So he was a young guy in the 50s. He was the youngest of the EC guys. So those were the days where guys would run around and get a 7-page story from this company and a 7-page story from Stan, and these were probably done after EC. So
wow, that's a. Now you said that was volume 2. Do you have the first one?
The first volume is not Al. I forget who did the first.
Oh, so it's kind of, I get it.
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
So, but yeah, and then the other, I got the, they did a reprinting like the Stuntman and a bunch of the Kirby stuff from the 50s.
Mm.
You can get those on I think Amazon or wherever you buy your books. But it's kind of cool because we sort of live in this magical time of being able to like get amazing amounts of reprint material and new material. So that printing in China has allowed people to put out like all kinds of books now. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I mean, there's stuff like every month. You can go broke.
That's real. JRD wants to know, wasn't volume 1 Ditko? I don't know if you know.
I don't know. I mean, go to fantagraphics.com and I'm sure you can.
Yeah, JRD. Go over there and figure it out. That's right. And is that this new volume that you just picked up? Is it new, or are there more volumes?
I don't know.
And you went for Al.
I just saw this.
Mm-hmm.
Was it earlier in the month? I had seen somebody on Facebook had said, "Oh, hey, this thing," and then I went and ordered it and got it in like 10 days or something. It was just released.
Isn't that just like everybody was scrambling trying to get the DC guide? And I think didn't you just get that a little while ago, Mike?
The DC
style guide.
The style guide that Garcia.
Oh yeah, I got that. Last week, and I see like IDW has a Neil Adams one coming out, and there's so many of them, So, the great thing about the original art ones is that you get to see the actual art. It's amazing what you can learn from looking at the original compared to what you see on the old newsprint. Newsprint was very sort of forgiving in a way, or softening of some stuff. So it's pretty interesting.
It's talking about those comic art books. I was thinking about that because of Jules Pfeiffer passing away, and how that comic book of his that was in the library growing up, that I think almost all of us saw when we were that was like, we'd find that comic section in the library and it would just be that book and maybe one other, and it just melted our brains.
Yeah. What was the other one? There was the one that was yellow.
It was like From A to Zap or something like that. Or,
yeah. Well, what is that one? Yeah, I have it somewhere around here. It had like a bunch of Wally Wood stuff, and it had a lot of stuff like that.
It had that The Curse story by Wally Wood.
Yes.
That just melted my brain.
Yeah. I met Jules Pfeiffer. I told people that on Facebook. What was it, yesterday? I met him a couple of years ago in Baltimore, which was sort of funny because I'm sure most people who were younger than me wouldn't even know who Jules Pfeiffer was, because you kind of got to be an older person to know what those people are. And so I sat here and he was like sitting right there. I said, "Oh, great," in the Hilton. at the breakfast, having breakfast. So I thought, I'd strike up a conversation with him, and maybe we could talk about some old times or whatever. So I introduced myself, and I told him what I did, and he kind of had this like look on his face, and I said, do you ever see the comic stuff? He goes, no, I never look at the paper. The comic strips are all shit. And end scene.
He sounds like he could be a guest on our show.
He was like, because he was not interested in talking about the comics. So it's funny, Sometimes you meet people and they're really nice, and they're like I said, they're magical, like Santa Claus, and they're like everything you can imagine. And sometimes you meet some of those old guys and they were kind of like bitter, or you say the wrong word, you say, then they're like, slowly I turn, So,
Niagara Falls.
Right, yeah. So we did not have a good, interesting conversation, but that's okay.
Well, I think that's a nice segue into our conversation tonight. We have on the show one of our dear friends and patriots. Let me pull up the graphic. Mike Hawthorne. Yes.
Not him.
Yeah. Mike Hawthorne. I think Mike Hawthorne might get his master's jacket tonight.
This is the fourth time, right?
I don't know if it's been that many times.
Fifth time? The 17th time?
Well, I know we've interviewed him in Draw Magazine twice.
Yes.
And he's been on the podcast at least twice. So this might be the third time he's on the podcast. I think it warrants that he gets his master's jacket tonight for being
you know what? This Christmas he'll get a nice little envelope with like McDonald's coupons inside.
I saw
get some hot apple pies,
I just saw that meme, and there's like a 80s mom like with a cigarette, like watching you as you open the envelope.
My grandma would give us those little envelopes with the little,
Yeah. So what do you think? Thanks, Grandma.
Grab bags of Whitman. Grab bags of Whitman comics, where you would get a whole bunch of comics in a bag.
JRD is a keeper of the secrets. He thinks that this is his second. I don't know. I think he might have been on when we were doing it. But maybe he was on the audio version before we did it, because we've been doing this for a while.
We've been doing it since everything was vacuum tubes.
But enough talk, you guys. Let's bring him in. I'm really excited. Mike has been in the trenches with all of us for a long time and has drawn up probably almost everything at this point. So I think we're going to have a really good show. Mike, I'm going to prepare to beam you in. So, guys, we're going to have a great show. Prepare for rendering. Our good buddy Mike Hawthorne is in the chat. Ping!
Oh, hi.
Well, hello.
How are you guys? Sorry, I was looking at my book. You know how some guys look at Playgirls or Playboys and wishing they had a friend?
Yes.
I look at books and wish I could read. So, hi. How are you? Yeah, like earlier, I was watching and Mike did like this, and I thought he was a snort a line or something, like his nose went off frame. I was waiting for Sorry. Is this a family show? Wait a minute. Is this a family show?
No.
Well,
I've only been on 20 times. I was on the show when it was just pencil.
Yeah, we grew an extra pencil.
Before they put the other pencil on, I was on the show.
Our ratings changed when Mike started quoting Jules Pfeiffer.
It all went downhill.
Jokes. He was mean to Mike. So jokes. But you know what? Actually, I'm not going to say a joke. He just died. Shit. Well, his name was Jules, so whatever. That's a silly name. That's a silly name to have.
Oh my goodness! Hello, Mike Hawthorne. How are you?
Hi, how are you, man?
It's almost like I haven't seen you in some time.
Yes. How are you guys?
Good, man. Well, you know what? Well, oh, that Mike Hawthorne. Yes, right. The chat is full. We got a lot of people here waiting.
Oh, nice. Very nice. I love all these people.
Because we don't do this in a vacuum, Mike Hawthorne. When we go live, the people come out. They heard your chant, your howl in the mist. Ew.
Yeah. Ew.
And they keep running. I love it.
I sent each of them a Bitcoin. I made my own Bitcoin. It's not called Bitcoin though. It's damn it, I almost cursed. Can I curse? I don't remember.
Curse.
Yeah, it's not that funny anymore. But I'm gonna make my own coin and I'm gonna send it to people. That's actually, my son has been trying to talk me into making a coin and scamming all our fans. And I thought that's probably mean, but I do like money.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I probably shouldn't say that live on the show though.
No, it's too
all right, can we rewind this? Can we rewind this?
Sorry.
We'll start over. I'll do the book gag again. Hey, hi, how are you guys?
Hey, Mike. Mike, that's a cozy looking cardigan you're wearing.
This is not a cardigan. I cannot. This wasn't even a cardigan. It wasn't a card the first time. This is a raggedy ass sweatshirt. I stole this sweatshirt. It's got all little boogers on the side. Like I draw comics. A cardigan? What are you thinking?
He got those fat Deadpool royalties.
He got Deadpool checks.
The fat ass Deadpool royalties.
That's right. All this shit is a green screen. Behind me, it's just a wall, a green wall, and then behind that is the French Riviera. So if you hear anybody like a vaguely French accent murmuring, it's probably my bottle person bringing. No. Take the champagne and send it to Diddy. Tell him I'll be right over.
Chris Lopez says Hawthorne is the name of your.
Hawthorne.
I think he's on to something. All right, all jokes aside, we're really excited to have you back, Mike. Mike is one of my bestest buds, and we do a lot of business together, and also we celebrate the art of cartooning.
We do
all the time.
I just realized my dead dogs are in the frame. Those two bags, they have dead dogs in them.
Oh,
they're
sweet.
Like
sweet.
Yeah. They're like, but they're like
you got them cremated.
You want the full screen to show the dead?
Did you get the footprint?
Yes. Yeah. Look, it's really nice. Oh shit! No, this is just a dead card. This doesn't have the footprint on it. I don't know where I put the footprint. But yeah, I didn't realize that my frame is really. What else is in my frame? Oh shit! I got my old Hulk hand up there. I used to use that all the time.
Mike, we got an hour and a half of that. Oh, there's the Obama candle. Yeah, that's good. Nice.
You better light that up.
I like
you
the
better
glasses.
light that up right now.
I am.
That's funny.
Oh, and this, my kids made me this when the Maui movie came out because they said I looked like the dude from Moana. With my hook, I can do spells with this shit. It's seen better days. It's a little floppy. Just give me a minute. It won't be this floppy the whole time.
I like everybody needs their Leon glasses right now. so Mike Hawthorne, Jamal,
yes.
What up, El Boogie? El Jamal Walton wants to know what's in your closet. That's a coded question, I feel.
It is literally stacked with drawing paper. Like all those shelves, it's literally all paper, sketchbooks, some wood panels from back when I still was an actual artist and painted before I was a hack. And fucking if this room ever catches fire, we're fucking fucked because it's like right next to my bedroom. This thing it's honest to God, this whole room, this is like a room of death. If there's like one
Marvel
spark,
paper
man.
Or DC paper?
There is DC paper in there actually. And then
you get them to send you a lot of extra.
I don't do it on purpose. They just kind of do, and then then they fire me or whatever. They fire me. But I will. My favorite thing to do is to take, like on a gig, use like if it's a Marvel gig, use one random DC page or vice versa, and just see who notices.
just to mess with them, just to keep them on their toes. Well, I remember back in the day, Mike, you were probably the first person I remember who had you had your own custom.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, because I was really. I mean, I'm stupid now, but I was like I was the first before I digivolved to my current level of stupid. I was like way more stupid. And
this isn't your final form though?
No, man. And I was it was like a maggot. And now I'm a fly, and then whatever comes after a fly. And I was my maggot form of stupid, and I thought I was gonna make my little independent Hysteria comics forever, ever, and a day. So I did I was like, I need a bunch of fucking paper. So I printed it was the shittiest paper, man. It was like, it was made by Scott's or some company like that. And I still have some actually in that closet. I drew some of the new Hysteria on it.
So you bought the paper and ran it through your printer, or you got a printer?
No, I went and found a printer that would do it for real cheap. Yeah. I mean, it's because it's like a one color thing and they don't have to do anything. I give them the file.
So wait, cheap. So like, say you made an 11 by 17
template, like a digital file, and then I took it to some printer. And I was like, here's the paper I want to use, and they just printed them up. It was surprisingly cheap, honest to God. Like, I probably would do it again if I, if people would keep buying Hysteria comics,
Well, I mean, I think that's an interesting thing to maybe start on, talking about kind of and on a lot of the shows where it's just the three of us and we don't have a guest, we kind of talk about industry stuff, or even just like being prepared to do this stuff for a living. Yeah. And there's always a price of entry that people don't really think about, So, when we were just coming up, and I would even ask people like Mike, like, wait, they give you board?
Yeah,
really? That's a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you just kind of having to go buy your own.
I still have a stock of the old good paper from Marvel and DC. And then I have some DC and Marvel paper that's the not as good stuff.
Yeah.
And I've done it on the show, if you pull out a page of the old stuff, it is like battleship level armor compared to, literally the super flimsy stuff we get now. The 3-ply Bristol from Strathmore is nothing like what the old 3-ply Strathmore was.
Yeah. I agree.
And
fucking GRD. God damn. He's right.
They make it different. They just make it different. So that's why I buy the pad, the 300 in the pad, because I was buying the 400, or you buy the 500, and you think, okay, it was not worth the money to spend that and get because I used to do the big sheets. I would get the big sheets and cut
them down. Yeah.
But it really wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Because I don't, I haven't inked my own work in forever. I sort of stopped caring, because it's just anything will take pencil. I don't care. And then we scan it and I send it off to Brazil or whoever is going to ink it. And, but I think you're right. I think the paper quality is, it's like they get whoever they get. I think they say it's Brett Strathmore, but I suspect it's like off-brand. Like there's missing a T if you look at the title on the paper.
It's
Strathmore.
I remember talking to John Romita once about it, and what they used to do is they ran it through twice. They did something extra.
Yeah.
And it made the paper better. They did something.
I bet they pressed it twice. Yeah. When I still inked myself, I still have an old gas oven, and I used to put I'd print out blue lines, and I would put my pages for the next day in the oven overnight.
Yeah.
Because at the very low heat that the stove sort of
it.
Yeah, and it just would harden. It would dry off the surface, and it would take ink I won't say it made the paper better, but it improved its perception of the ink dramatically.
Yeah. So when you were doing the stuff for DC, was the person inking it, printing it out in blue and inking it, or were they inking it digitally?
They were inking it. It was Adriano, who's amazing, and he inked all of my Tail and Marvel stuff, and then all the Batman stuff for the last 2 years. And I would just send him files. I would be sending him. I would make a drive folder. I just sort of like stopped bothering with like any of the internal stuff that Marvel and DC use. So I just have a drive that I pay for like the extra storage, and then I create a folder on my own. So it's like my own FTP, and I would just make a folder, send it to everybody, and I would upload pages as I finished them, and then he would just print them out on his end and ink them traditionally, which is dope because he has all these pages that seem to be selling well for him. So it's nice. Yeah,
so you have the pencils. Man. He has the inks. Do people want to buy the pencils and the inks?
Hell no. Nobody. Everybody wants the inks because it looks dope. No one gives a shit about the pencils. I don't sell pages at all, dude.
Honestly, I find that very odd.
I'm sorry.
I find that odd because I would think that artists would especially want to see the pencils.
I'm gonna get one of those scales they have at the supermarket. I'm gonna sell them by the pound at John's. And do that shit.
This I'm telling you, just hold on to them because you know what?
Yeah.
All those old guys like Buscema, I got $5 John Buscema pages.
Yeah.
In the 90s. In the 80s.
I have some John Buscema pages, the inked of mine, which were like I have a stash of stuff that I'll never sell unless like I need a kidney or something. But I did a Thor short that he inked and Walt wrote. I don't know what I did right in a past life to get that gig, but and then he sent me the inks. It was fucking, and he was in his 80s when he did it. They're still amazing, man. Like they're just, but the pages are like worn. Like I don't know what he did. It's like I sent it to him and they came back like missing a few layers. It's as if like he worked them so hard the paper got thinner or something.
Like he was pressing.
Yeah. It was just, it's awesome. I won't get rid of them ever. Like I said, unless
So that was John or Sal?
Sal. Sorry, my bad, Sal. Yeah. It's awesome, man.
Yeah, he's still going.
He's so cool.
He's just sort of officially retired.
Oh shit, it's bright in here.
Yeah.
I forgot I was wearing the glasses. Shit, it's a whole new world. I feel like I'm on a magic carpet ride.
Oh, hey, don't get a strike. We don't do strikes. No singing.
Sorry.
So on the hysteria stuff you're doing now, are you penciling and inking on the thing, or are you penciling and then inking digital, or?
I'm inking digitally. So I'm using Procreate and on an iPad with an Apple Pencil, which is like, I've never done for clients except once, I think. That's a lie. No, I inked a Batman story towards the end, like right before I left the book, just to kind of test it. This is gonna sound shitty, but I wanted to make sure they looked good when they printed. I figured let them figure it out. So and that went really well. And so I've been inking this. Now I did the cover traditionally, other than the colors, which I did in Photoshop. But I'm inking using Procreate and a variety of brushes, just because it's sort of forcing me to be less precious about it. Like I've gotten very, my mainstream work's gotten really rigid, and I've been thinking a lot about artists that, Jamar and I talk a lot about hip hop, so this might be lost, but like, I was thinking these two rappers I like. So it's Kendrick Lamar and there's another guy named Sky Zoo. They're about the same age, and they're both incredibly intelligent. Like they both very similar backgrounds, like advanced classes, really smart, always have multiple like depths of meaning to their lyrics. But Sky Zoo's like not nearly as popular as Kendrick. And I'm just looking at these two guys thinking like, why is that? And it made me think of some quote I heard from Frank Miller where he said like, people that really excite everyone are guys like Kirby, who like you can look at and go, that's clearly not right, but I don't care because it makes me feel something. Versus like artists that were more, traditionally trained, where we all look at it and go, "That's beautiful," and I love the craft of it. But you don't get the same gut feeling you do of someone like Kirby. So, and I think I'm on the other camp. Not to try to describe myself as boring, but I've gotten very technical. Like I'll spend, way too much time drawing a full perspective grid so that everything is perfect. And it looks great and it sells books. But I have gotten very far astray from where I started in comics. So I'm trying to make myself be less precious and less academic and less analytical and just like do shit that looks cool. And working digitally has allowed for some of that, has allowed for some of that, I think.
Hawthorne, Notorious GRD just gave you a interesting compliment. Mike does have two styles, one for mainstream and one for his own properties. And the work for his own properties is more fun and free. No corporate editor over your shoulder.
And I can't even blame a corporate editor.
Yeah.
Right? Because I came up with this sort of early on, I bounced around with styles and editors would be like, I want to hire you, but I don't know which version of Mike I'm going to get. And so I realized I need to chill out and stop, confusing people. So I sort of came up with this movie style, action movie style that was easily marketable. And I enjoyed doing that work. But that wasn't anybody saying, hey, draw this way. It's just that's what I came up with that I thought I could do. And it was interesting to me because I do like classical drawing, analytical drawing. I just realized even back in art school, I did this weird thing, right? Where I was painting traditionally in oils. And then I would go do some goofy painting that was didn't make any sense with the rest of my body of work. So I could never show it to the professors because they're always like, what the hell's going on? So I can't blame anyone. This is me just being neurotic and weird and drawing differently every time I picked up a pencil and then forcing myself to draw one way so I could make money because money is fun.
Well, I do think that there are different expectations when you're working on certain books, right?
Yeah.
If you're working on X-Men or you're working on Spider-Man or you're working on Batman, there's certain books that there's a certain lineage and the fans of those particular characters like a certain type of aesthetic to the art, right? Overall, you're not going to get something that's way over here or something that's way over here, unless it's a Marvel fanfare story, right? Where they get, somebody to do their take on or Batman Black and White, where they would get somebody to do Mobius did his weird ass Batman story, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that that is something that happened now more than it used to happen, partially because comics for most of their history, there wasn't this expectation or this fandom outside of maybe Batman or Superman. They sort of had the Bob Kane style or the old, the old Superman style. But I do think that you're right. There is when you look at Kirby or Ditko, when they would draw New York City in the comic, you knew it was New York City.
Yeah.
But it didn't look like you took a photograph and traced it, right? Yeah. They had a basic perspective. Well, Kirby always cheated his perspective because he always did the one point, but he would move the points so it would warp. So it wasn't the one point with the one point. You know who else does that is Miyazaki. Does that thing and Mobius would do that sometimes, where you don't put the point in the middle, you move it. So it kind of warps it out. But when you would look at their drawing of a city, especially someone like Kirby, it was abstracted, but you still accepted the fact that that was a brownstone in New York, right? Like that.
Right.
I think of those. There's that one shot of like the Thing resting a building on his back, right? And Kirby could probably draw that brownstone from memory. It convinced you, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Now I think
like
that there's
New
this
York.
right now there's this expectation, I think, or maybe we feel there's an expectation that the fans want to see something that looks like you traced a photograph.
Yeah, there's a weird level. I mean, I try to go for believability, and I probably get excessive about details when I'm drawing backgrounds. But yeah, I think you're right. I think there was I remember was it a contract where Eisner tells a story about this neighborhood in the Bronx that I remember it felt like New York without actually like going too crazy about, drawing every brick and doing all the stupid shit I do. And I always tell myself, like, it feels like I'm going to church. I'm in church and I'm praying. I'm like, I'm going to be good. This is going to be great. I'm going to leave here. I'm not going to sin anymore. And then I leave and like, there's like booze and women, and then I sin a bunch, right? Like I don't know what it is. I get into that thing and I'm like, and I think I like to think my stuff doesn't look traced because I'm building it all, right? Like I'm composing it the way, using old school perspective techniques. But I do find like I'll do, an excessively detailed background, and then some reviewer will say like, it's like he hardly tried. And I'm like, what's the disconnect? And I realize what it is that I'm like, they're looking at my work and then they'll look at someone who literally has done what you're saying, like tracing or using a 3D model for a background. And so that still looks more impressive to them. And that's whatever, that's their taste. But I think that I've allowed myself to like go too far down into that rabbit hole. And I don't regret doing the kind of work I've been doing, but I just need to like, I'm in a funny spot where I just feel like I'm like I mentioned with Twitter, just wiping out all my tweets just because I just need to like clean a bunch of surfaces off and start anew. And it feels like a good time to do that in a lot of ways. So I'm trying to still make, in Hysteria, it's set in this Caribbean, a fictional Caribbean city, and I'm trying to still base it on what that place looks like using sort of, composite references from various Caribbean cities, but I want it to feel right and not look exactly like a particular place, which is what I've been chasing all this time, with my mainstream work.
Well, it's funny when I do something like the Phantom, I feel like what I'm doing is I'm like playing I'm like doing King Lear, right? Like a play that's been done for a long time. People who see it have an expectation. The people who follow that character for, 80 years have an expectation of what that character what the characters look like, so I don't feel like I could like do something that would be really crazy, because then it wouldn't really look like the character to most of the people who care about that character.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A 12-year-old wouldn't know that. You could draw anime Phantom, right? They would know about all the other stuff, right? But there is a certain... I haven't worked on a character where the audience had that kind of expectation, because they didn't on Batman, because there's a lot of versions of Batman, right?
Yeah.
But there was really kind of only one version. I mean, there was 3 artists, but basically everybody knows the Cy Berry version of the Phantom, right? Like the Ditko Spider-Man, the Romita Spider-Man, and the McFarlane Spider-Man kind of like right? So depending upon where you grew up, it was either, Ditko or, Romita, or later it was McFarlane. People have an expectation of what that kind of feels like.
Yeah, I agree, man. I'm glad you mentioned, especially King Lear, because like when I got offered Batman, I genuinely wasn't sure I was right for it. And I struggled like getting started on the book, and I thought this doesn't make sense. Like, why? It's just I just came off of Daredevil, same shit, just changes outfit a little bit. But like, I could not come up with an approach that made sense to me, and it occurred to me that like, oh, it's because Batman. I had internal expectations of it that I wasn't really aware of at the time, and I realized it's all opera. Like everything had to feel kind of over the top and like just on the verge of being silly. But you don't feel it's silly when you're in the opera house and listening to the stuff. Like, so I changed the approach. That's why I think I started to become more aware of like, because in Daredevil and all the New York type of stuff that the New York type comics I was doing, it was like a real easy, just I need to draw this neighborhood in New York City, just find a bunch of references and draw it. With Batman, I realized I had to like, and especially my run began in another universe where he gets kicked out into a universe where there's no Bruce Wayne. So like, I'm also getting typecast where I keep getting these. I always get somebody's comic when they're in jail or where they're poor, which is starting to get on my goddamn nerves. But they kicked Batman into a universe where he's got no money, so he had to make his own suit. So it was fun in that I had to like recreate everything, including Gotham. But once I got my head around, I was like, oh, this can just be a set versus like a place. And I started to compose everything differently. Like my first couple of issues, I was like stacking figures so that it looked like reminiscent of Gothic art. If you ever see, figures in Gothic art, they're often like sort of like stacked like this across the panel, and you read it left to right. And I started to do all that kind of stuff, and then it started to click because I realized I was less concerned about what everything looked like and how accurate it was, and more involved in how it felt. And that made it fun for me and made it work for me with Batman. Because honestly, I really didn't think I was going to pull it off.
Well, the other thing too that's interesting about Batman is that DC's rebooted itself fucking 5 times or some shit. There's like a reboot, right? Yeah. And so Marvel's never rebooted. And so I think the iconic nature of what the Marvel universe is much more concrete, where like the Batman, when I was doing it, they gave us Anton Furst's designs for Gotham City from the movie.
Oh shit, really?
Yes.
Wow.
And then there was a lot of like us, the various artists. Okay, we got to have like, well, what does the fucking Batcave look like? What is the shit on? What level? Where's the penny? Where's the dinosaur? Where's all that stuff? And it's ironic because having also worked on the cartoon, that stuff's all done in the beginning. Like here's the Batcave, here's the door, the boat's here, whatever. Then you just draw it, right? You just board the thing. But in the comic. And the cartoon is not rebooted. It's just like this is what we're taking. We're designing it. We write the story. We're running it. But in the comic, it was all this going back and forth. You got different people doing different styles. You got like me doing something, Brett doing something, then Jim Ballant doing something, right? Graham Nolan doing something, Tan Grummett doing something. And some things are like more different than other things, right? So it also depends upon the story that you're given, right? Is it like an old Jim Aparo, Bob Haney kind of story where the Joker's kind of goofy, right? Or is it like those really good early detectives where he's really more like a detective, like looking at shit with his, you know, examining things and stuff. So it's not, and they weren't really sure, right? Because then they brought in the new Batman, the guy with the Azrael with the costume, right? So it was the same thing. I was like, oh, I'm gonna get to draw Batman, but except it's not Batman.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And oh, by the way, here's a bunch of movie designs. Okay, right? So then it's like you having to try to figure out how do I incorporate that into, like, to me, my Batman was Neil Adams and Jim Aparo, right? Those classic stories. So that was in my head, right? That's like the sword that's hanging over my head, right? So I can see how that, and they don't tell you anything. It's not like you're sitting down and having a design conference.
Yeah, I would have killed for that, honestly, because it was frustrating to stop everything and go. Like I had later on in my run, I had to do a scene where he enters the Batcave through the clock entrance thing, and I like killed myself looking for like what, because I get a little obsessive about this stuff. So I'm like, what is that clock?
Right.
And no one ever nailed it down, and everybody sort of makes up a clock. And that was hard for me to resolve. Like that's why I realized like I have to treat this like it's a set, and I'm just a set designer. And to your Hamlet comparison, this is my version I'm doing right now, and whoever comes after can figure out whatever loops, you know, like loopholes I left behind, which is frustrating because I'd rather it all be nailed down. But that's just not how that particular series. And Jamal made a comment like, "Oh, it doesn't matter what a penny is because Alfred moves it around." And I think that's kind of, you just have to accept that. Like, stop. If you're too obsessive about wanting a floor plan, which is what I want to do, right? You make it. You take the magic out of it. What's that Mazzucchelli quote where like in the reprint for Dark Batman Year One, where he talks about as you add more details to the character, he becomes less believable, not more. I think that's the part that I had issues with. I really wanted like what you described with the TV show, where we nail all this down so I know where everything is. So if I point the camera this way or that way, I know what's behind him. Where like no one seems to give a shit about that, and so if I ask for it, I'm like, it's like I'm being a weirdo.
Right.
So
I
just
actually
decided,
I did do some drawings of stuff like that when I was working. And see, the differences on the TV show is they have to design everything to look the same because it's going to be, everybody's going to be, 20 people are doing it on the same show, right?
right.
You got at least three board guys, a bunch of background people, right? A director. So if like one guy's drawing the penny over here, and then the next guy's drawing the dinosaur over there, and then the next scene you cut, and then like, well, the dinosaur's over here. You have to, right?
Yeah.
Because of the nature of film. I think what they did in comics is they always kind of played fast and loose. Like what was inside the Baxter building? Whatever the fuck Jack Kirby decided he wanted to put in the Baxter building.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there was, you know, every once in a while they'd have like an annual, they'd have a floor plane, like the pogo planes here, and this is where the swimming pool is, and this is the kitchen, and this is but that didn't stick to any of that when you're actually drawing the comic, right?
Yeah, often you can't, right? Because I did find a map like that of the Batcave, and I realized like I can't draw this because it doesn't fit the scene. Like what I need Batman to have to do.
Right.
If I did that, this would be in the way, and I'd have to like it's so you almost have to change the stage dressing like every time there's a new scene. So once like I'm sort of coming back to this point over and over, so forgive me, but like it really was just deciding like none of this matters in a whole, just each scene you have to be able to like make the person believe, yes, Batman's doing X, Y, and Z, and everything makes sense. Which was, you know, frustrating a little bit, but it worked out. And like, shit, man, that first run, the first arc rather, you know, everything was made up. I mean, like I had to design a whole new, so there was no Arkham Asylum. It was like Arkham. It was basically like an entire subway system, like an old underground abandoned sewer / subway system that was made into like Arkham caves. So I had to like, okay, how do I make this recognizable? Like this is Arkham, but it doesn't look like any version you've seen before. Like, so there's also that is like every single thing in the Batman universe kind of has a character to it.
Right.
That's why you can change the look of it as long as the feel is there, and everybody accepts it, you know, and just that's Arkham because people are just crazy people in there, and they're all locked up, and Batman has to fight people in there.
When you were jumping to Hysteria, were you thinking about using the Batman style, like the DC Marvel style you were developed?
No, because this is a thing that like I never stopped. So I started my career doing Hysteria, and I never stopped doing them, even when and it was, my style was more cartoony for that. And so even as I was taking gigs, the plan was always like take gigs so I could make more of my thing. But then, you know, these gigs eat up all your time, so it doesn't work out. But the style was always meant to be more like a more pure version of cartooning, less on a house style and just more on everything being expressive and more animated in its approach, right? Lines of action, good silhouettes, like everything reading well versus a lot of surface detail, which I think I do worry that it probably throws people off. Like you know, when we launched the Kickstarter for Hysteria, there was a lot of like, hey, you know, I'm leaving Batman to try this thing. And I think a lot of people are looking at it and going like, I don't get it. Like, why? First of all, why are you leaving Batman? Second of all, why doesn't this look like Batman?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? So, but that's okay. That's not what that was ever meant to look like. And I always treated Hysteria like it was a little like Mike's describing with the Batman show, where I would do characters as like even the main characters have gone through several revisions. I sort of think of like how that Batman show began and then sort of had like a redesign period like halfway through. And I remember looking at those designs and going, oh, this is so smart, because they took everything that worked, because that first, you know, chunk was so well designed, but you could see there were parts there that like you just don't need, we can clean this up. And it just made everything stronger. So that's what I told myself I'd do with Hysteria. It's just like put it all through a filter. Like, what don't I need on this design? How can I pare everything down versus my mainstream work, which is like, how can I make everything nuts where, you know, every time you look at it, you go like, wow, who hurt this guy? Why is he doing this to himself?
Right.
Well, Mike, I have a question about just over your career of getting gigs, and I know even if it's not your intention, we all kind of get pigeonholed in weird ways, right?
Yeah.
So do you feel like you ever got turned into the guy who draws a lot of buildings? You know what I mean? Because it seemed like your Deadpool stuff, you could kind of move. You moved around. You and Jerry moved around.
Yeah.
And then like you hit Spider-Man. Then there was Daredevil. And then, you know, so
buildings. I mean, those characters have buildings. Yeah.
I don't know if it's that or I started to feel like, and I've made this comparison before, like what's the character in Pulp Fiction, the Fox guy or whatever that Harvey Keitel plays?
The Fixer,
yeah, the Fixer guy. You like call in when like, oh shit, like I accidentally shot this guy in the head. Can you come clean this up? At first, my career was like that. I would be called in to like fix things that had gone very awry. And then I tried my best to get away from that, not because I didn't appreciate the work, but because like I wasn't always doing myself a favor by being that guy, the wolf. That's it. And then I realized that I started to become the guy that like could do anything, right? Like, oh, you could throw Mike on a space book or a horror book or an action book. It'll be fine and it'll work out. And you can almost set it to like autopilot. Like you just, as long as you feed him scripts, you get comics on the other end. And that was it. And that's fine. I like that. And I got a lot of great jobs, but I don't know. I think it's time to see like what happens if I don't treat everything like a heavy lift. You know what I mean? Like, what if I slow it down? And I say slow down, but that work was slow. I mean, slow down in the sense of like, I'm going to do less better so that I can do more of the work quickly and spend more time developing it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's my hope. And I think to answer your question, I don't think it was specific to buildings. I think it was just like, this is going to be really hard to draw. Who will do this and won't complain about it?
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Right. I mean, you're doing urban characters, so
yeah.
I mean, whether you're drawing Batman or Spider-Man or Daredevil, I mean, they're all guys running around top rooftops.
Yeah. Well, and I also don't know if I'm getting all the hard. If I don't want to say hard gigs. I don't know if people look at it and go, "Oh, this will be difficult to." Let's give it to Mike, or if whatever I take, I make fucking difficult. Like, you know, like when we right before COVID hit, I got the George R.R. Martin thing, the wild cards, and man, I made that shit such a nightmare for myself because I'm like researching everything, like, you know, it's set in the 40s, and I remember getting obsessed about a guy's like. He's supposed to have a suit, but he's supposed to like a proto zoot suit, and he had like a frumpy hat. I remember spending so long looking for the right suit for this guy instead of just going, "It's a suit with big shoulders." Like, stop being an idiot. And I would just make, and there was all these planes. Like, the main character, Jet Boy, has like this prototype jet that predated the German jet that like got used late in World War II.
109 or whatever.
I don't remember the name. It's something. Yeah, I think it's a German name.
Yeah,
that's stupid. That was a stupid
joke.
Yeah, that's it. Actually, I think that's it. Anyway, I just spent so much time, and I made it so difficult on myself drawing. Like, there's a scene where he's fighting this guy who has a like, it's supposed to be like 5 blimps stuck together with like a battleship, like a small battleship attached to the bottom, so he can fly at like the edge of space. And I remember thinking, this is so stupidly difficult. Like, and instead of going, what is the shorthand for this? I drew the 5 blimps strapped together with an actual battleship underneath. Had all these like 3D models so I could look for references of like the guns and stuff. And like an idiot, I should just be like, here, drop the 3D model and draw digitally and here's the figure on top. But instead, I'm like drawing the stupid things. And COVID hit, and we only got 2 issues in. So I'm thinking at first, well, we're going to give Marvel their answer to the Watchmen, right? Because if you know anything about the Wild Cards books, it's like, it's so perfect for like a new Watchmen style story. And then COVID hit, and they paused it, and then I got moved over to Daredevil and some other stuff, the Hulk, I think. So I didn't come back to it. And then when they started it back up, they asked, I had already left. Like, my contract was up at Marvel, and I was off to do, I think I was working on Wonder Woman at the time, and which was kind of a dream gig for me. So I was like excited to be doing it. And they asked, hey, do you want to come back to this thing? And I'm like, I'm sorry, man. I already took this other gig. And they had another artist come and do the last 2 issues, and they look great. Like, they look fine. Sorry, my dogs they're city dogs, and they do a lot of drugs, and they're crazy at night. He did great. He did fine, right? But he didn't like make himself suffer. Maybe it's because I was Catholic. Maybe I just don't. Maybe I'm not happy unless I'm like punishing myself in some way. And I realized, like, what is wrong? Something's wrong with me. I got a problem. I really have a problem. I should maybe I need to talk to someone.
You know, I will chip in with this. I think part of it is maybe accepting that that's part of your process to do the kind of work that you do. And I talk to Blevins about this all the time. We've had this conversation going back 40 years, right? Because I believe that part of it is accepting who you are as an artist. Or you can say, I'm not satisfied with who I am as an artist, and I'm going to try to come up with, because Brett was really good with coming up with different techniques, different ways of working, different ways of, well, I'm gonna try to do a sort of a Jesse Marsh thing, or I'm gonna try to do a sort of a Toth thing, where in some ways that's sort of like anti what he is.
Yeah.
In his nature, right?
Yeah.
Like I posted a page on my Facebook and also on my Blue Sky that he did on his first job, which is Dark Crystal job. Beautiful, intricate drawing, which is really a big part of who he is. Right? But he's always trying to find a way of going, I'm gonna go against it. I'm gonna sort of change this up, right? Which means that you have a conflict, but maybe part of you likes that conflict because that's part of your process, is having conflict.
Yeah, I think I'm being stupid because it's like my brand, but I know that it's funny you mentioned Brett, because I thought about him a lot when I was doing this blimp scene, because I remember thinking about a page that he I think he was on the Pirates of the Caribbean books, like way back in the day, and he would do these like amazing complicated, like dudes fighting skeletons on a ship, crazy compositions. And I remember thinking, like, geez, this guy's a literal genius. How is he doing this? And then everything looks beautiful. I think in music, there's this thing, perfect pitch, right? And you're supposed to be either born with it or you're not. I think in art, it's like an eye for composition. Either like you could just look at a thing and know where to put everything. And that's, a rare genius to have. And I ain't got it. And I know that, like, I can do good work if I do all the homework, if I do all the training and I do all the, like, I saw a thing with Stanley Kubrick where he had an assistant, literally, like, they were going to film some scene in New York, and he had an assistant go and take like direct shot photos of an entire city block in New York. Just like, here's a picture, move 5 feet, here's another picture, here's another picture, because he felt like he needed to see all of it so that he could point a camera at two people walking down the street. It's like, you didn't need all those pictures probably, but I understand you, right? Like, that's a crazy thing to do, but I get it. Because I remember being on Queen and Country and offering someone in England art. I was like, dude, I'll give you pages if you can go to this subway, go up the steps, take a picture of the MI6 building, like, and just take pictures along the path. For like a page and a half of someone just getting off a subway platform and walking towards the building. Any other perfectly sane person would just draw that. But my dumb ass was like, I remember holding up the book because I was like, there's a scene that's supposed to have a bird in it. And I don't know if the bird I chose is in England. So I'm like, spent a day looking to see if this stupid bird. So I think, and that doesn't come out of like, I think there is a certain amount of insecurity to that. And I think it's because of being afraid of getting it wrong, right? Like, you get something wrong and it's like having an accident. Like, you don't plan to step out on some ice and fall. And so you try to become super cautious and you're looking all the time to make sure you're not stepping on ice.
Well, see, that's important to you. That's important.
Yeah, that's how I feel like I'm drawing.
Right.
Like, I'm always looking at my feet, making sure there's no ice.
Right.
I need them. If I just pay enough attention, I won't make a mistake, because I've made this work so important to me. I think that's why, like, when I talk about it, I tend to act like a dipshit because I just like, I don't want to talk. I'm not that bright, and I don't want to talk like I'm smart when I'm talking about the work. I just rather like be kind of a clown about it and then make the work as serious as I can make it. If that makes sense.
Well, it's funny because when I did the Weave World book for Marvel, the Clive Barker book that took place in England. And I went to England and I went to Liverpool and I shot like 40 rolls of film.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and reading this, the book, like, oh, the guy comes over this wall and goes down on the train track. So I'm like going around doing exactly what you were describing, because I can't. Now you could probably fake it with Google Earth, right? You could go around on Google Earth and you could see what a mailbox looked like, and what a doorknob looked like, and what a street looked like. And you could do it here. Like you could go draw Philadelphia and never go to Philadelphia. Just plenty of. But in 1990, there wasn't that, right? So I did the same thing, because if I have to draw a mailbox or a guy walking down the street, I can't draw our mailbox.
Yeah.
And like all the cars, the telephone, all the fixtures, everything is different.
Yeah.
It's not at all like our stuff here, right?
Yeah. The Brits themselves are different. I didn't know. If you guys didn't know, apparently no Brit has an earlobe. Like it's not even a thing.
They're all attached.
They bred them out. No, like they don't have earlobes at all. The ear it looks like a letter C.
Right.
They bred them out of the species. I'm sorry.
So I know how you feel, but I feel that that's just part of being a professional who cares about doing a job. And I think the older I've gotten as an artist, the more I feel if you accept those things about yourself, I think it allows you to flow better. And the reason I say that, when I look at people like Hubert or Kirby, or anybody who did just like a massive amount of work, and all good, like all good, all massive amount of good work, right? Those guys accepted that part of themselves. Like Kirby's not a realist. He accepted that he was not a realist. The most realistic his work looked was in the mid-50s, when he was working for DC and he was doing, Sky Masters and all that. There was that middle part there where his proportions were sort of like more like the DC house style. But he's not a realist, right? He never really drew accurate, Alex Raymond kind of anatomy, all right?
Yeah.
But he could pull it off. If he had to draw a Corvette or he had to draw something real, he could do it. I saw a cover by him a little last year where he had a woman playing a violin, which is not an easy thing to draw. It was beautiful. So if he had to draw something that was, naturalistic, not a guy with a pack of hot dogs socking some guy in the head, he could do it. So I think some guys come to that, some artists come to that early. It's like, I'm not a realist. This is the way I draw. I can't draw anything other way. And I'm not even interested in trying to draw another way. This is what I do. If you like what I do, but if you're more flexible, or you try to be open to different approaches, right? You're open to different approaches, and that's part of what makes you who you are.
There's a thing from J. Robert, who says, for a small length of time, Mike, it looked like you had Floyd's The Wall on repeat as you drew every brick. How do you keep your sanity with that kind of detail?
I do think there is it's a little bit of what Mike has been talking about, that sort of dedication to wanting it to sell, right? Wanting it to look like the thing you're telling people it is. And for whatever reason, it always felt weird for me to start some bricks and then not like draw all of them.
Batman comic sucks. There's only 99 bricks. If it was 100.
Yeah. It's really ridiculous. I don't have a good answer for it other than mental illness, like I said earlier. I think there's something just wrong that once I start on that path, it's hard to not, it's hard to deviate from it, basically. It also just, I think there is a little bit, I've joked with people that like, I don't need to meditate because I draw, and there's something to the act of drawing, and I draw a lot, like once I'm doing all this nonsense with comics, I'm still doing figure drawing, I'm still practicing things. So I think there is a sort of like finding inner peace in it, not to try to sound too hippy dippy, but like it's both stressful but calming to do, like yeah.
Were there any tricks for drawing? Because I remember when I was doing a children's book a while back and had tons and tons and tons of leaves, way too many leaves, and I would cover a lot of my path ahead, so I didn't have to see how much more I had to do. I mean, it was very.
Put your arms on it.
Yeah, I had one.
Yeah,
I didn't want to know how much more. Was there anything that
you up there?
That's a great idea. I tended to do the opposite. I tend to have a perspective grid, just sticking with the bricks thing, so that I feel like I know where I'm going. It's sort of like taking a test, like, oh, I got 5 more questions and then I'm done, kind of thing. But man, that's kind of a good psychological hack to just hide parts of it from yourself. I genuinely, I mean, we're joking about it, but I think there's something to that. Like, if that causes you stress, put it away till later, right? Like,
yeah.
Well, here's an interesting thing. I mean, and I do agree. I think that artwork, doing drawing, is a meditation because you leave the conscious world, you go into your interior world where you are in a meditative state to do the work. But if you were drawing a brick wall in Hysteria, would you feel compelled to draw the bricks in the detail that you would on Batman?
Yeah, that's a great question because I had to fight that a little bit. There's a couple panels where I had to come up with like a workaround, little like Steve's talking about hiding sections. He had to draw. I started to like research, and in the Caribbean there's some buildings that are old stone buildings that are covered with stucco. So I was like, okay, I'll just plan it and use more of that as like it doesn't make sense. Plus, there's not like a lot of brick buildings. So I just found a logical way to talk myself out of doing it. But then I started to catch myself wanting to do it with other things like windows or wires from, one of the things you see in Puerto Rico a lot is because of the failing electrical system, there's like a lot of, not just Puerto Rico, but where there's like poles with tons of wires coming off of them, where just people kind of jerry-rigging their electrical system.
Yeah.
So I was doing some of that, and I realized like, okay, I'm probably going too far with some of this. Chill out a little bit. People get the point. So I'm also just more. I think by forcing myself to simplify my style, it leaves more room for creativity. I think that's what was the magic behind, Kirby and like Jamar's work is like, if you're not obsessing about the act of drawing, then you're drawing for the story and nothing else. And that's not to say detail's bad, and like I'm not poo-pooing my work. I'm just saying that to me, like, we'll never have another Kirby in mainstream comics because you're not allowed to just like just generate ideas nonstop like a hose the way he did, and then just execute them in a style that allows for the free flow of that creativity. And so it's kind of what I'm chasing, I think, with this thing,
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I also think that there's an analogy to when you look at the anime stuff, where you will look, say, somebody like Miyazaki, where the characters are very simple and super cartoony, yet the backgrounds are amazing.
Yeah.
Like you would see in Japan, you would see one of those telephone poles that's got like a bajillion wires going into it. And then he would draw something like Ponyo, right? He would just draw like the most simple kind of Charlie Brown kind of simple character, but you don't feel that conflict between, oh, okay, here's a million, you know, or some beautifully rendered background, right? With that great Japanese sense of space. And then you got like this character's just drawing 4 lines. You don't feel the conflict, and people, the viewers don't feel like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
So,
but I think there's a weird thing that happens, at least for me, and I think that's why, like, writers, there's always this debate about artists versus writers, and artists are the idea guys. I think for me, the physical act of drawing and all the analytical stuff that goes into it, like makes, it's kind of a constraint for feeling creative. That's why it feels like a task versus telling a story. So if I can free up that physical part of the work, I can be more creative with the gags and the story and all the stuff that's going on in between the where the bricks would be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't want us talking about bricks in the wall, Mike, to take away from your figure work, because
give me 1 second. My phone's about to die. I thought it was plugged in. I'm so sorry.
Well, just
you
to
can
talk.
Keep going. I can hear you still.
Well, just to talk about Mike is not all about bricks. You know what I mean? It's like you also do very detailed figures, and kind of what we were talking about earlier, and how kind of like the modern fan kind of has some conceits of demand of things, like, say, Captain America has 40 grommets on his boots rather than the old Buccaneer boot, and he just let's keep it moving. Do you ever feel, you know, especially with your high profile gigs like with Batman and Wonder Woman, did you ever feel kind of like, are you guys really serious? You care about this? Have you had those kind of like reactions to some of the comments?
Yeah, I think, well, for me, people are usually more like, most people are very kind. You will get occasional people who just say, like the thing I said earlier, were like, oh, it's like he's hardly trying. And that's hard to like resolve in my head, because I'm not sure what they're referring to always. And so that can make you nuts, and you feel like, well, maybe if I drew, like you said, more, if I drew his shoelaces, maybe they'll love me. Like, but ultimately, I don't think a lot about it. I just try to make it make sense. And so for me, going back to the boots thing, the Buccaneer boots, although I get they're fun, that would be hard for me to resolve, because I'm like, I don't even understand what is that shit. Like, why?
How does that work?
Is that his sock over the boot? Like, why does that look goofy?
No, they flip those down.
Yeah, you know. So I don't mind that. Like, I kind of like some of the mindless small details of the job. But then I try to find a shorthand, and it tends to be like the more structural stuff, like going to Deadpool or Spider-Man. Like, I tried to come up with a structural pattern, like where all the lines on the outfit go and what do they line up with anatomically, and like, so I can kind of run through all the stuff that seems complicated, and then drawing shoelaces or something, that's a lot less complicated. It just looks like it is because it's involved. For me, like, you know, the harder part was like Spider-Man's webbing, and how do you come up with a pattern that you can reproduce. The one that, you know, drives lots of artists nuts, but especially me, was, you know, how do you resolve the fact that it comes like this, but then there's inexplicably a straight line coming down the middle of his neck? You know, did he come in meat? And it's just like that kind of little stuff that would drive me nuts. I worried less about things like details on boots and stuff.
Steve Ditko never lost any sleep over that.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I spent so much time trying to find reference for how you resolve the way the webbing comes to the back of the head, and there's that one web that has to split or else it doesn't make any sense. And it was that's the kind of stuff and I'm not good with patterns either for whatever reason. Like it just makes me want, like I have to when I was on Amazing, I was like so paranoid about getting the curve wrong because I have like Spider-Man webbing dyslexia or something where I always tried to draw it backwards
instead of like instead of this, you did it like that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The points are supposed to go away from the face, and I would keep wanting to do them backwards for some reason. Like, but that's the stuff that causes me more grief than anything. People expecting details out of the work is like, I think there's just an expectation of what a modern comic looks like, and there's not much you can do to change that unless you're able to adapt your style in a way that makes it just work. Like Chris Samnee is a perfect example. Like, you know, Chris is the kind of comic artist that like you could pick him up and drop him in any generation and he'd still be amazing because he just manages to make his work fit but still be gorgeous and beautiful and meet all your expectations.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes too, I think it's certain artists on certain book on certain story, right? It's like a combination of things because you can have a popular artist who's not on a popular book, a popular character, and the fans will be like, you know, it's like you put them on Wolverine, oh okay, but you put them on, you know, Jimmy Olsen, they'd be like, you know, that's not so hot. So
I got that when I was on Conan. People just immediately took a disliking to me. You know, I was just like,
I said that today did a post about Art Nichols, and I was told by a Marvel editor
about your nipples.
Art Nichols.
Oh, Art Nichols, not our nipples. No, 1 year when I thought it was our nipples.
And I worked on Conan, and I was told by a Marvel editor that working on Conan or a war book was basically not important because it was not continuity, and the only person who could get away with doing that was John Buscema. The Marvel editors did not care about Conan because it's not continuity, and then fans don't care about Conan because it's not continuity.
Christ,
like Spider-Man's continuity, right? You know, every issues of the Defenders is continuity. Conan, you could do the most beautiful issue of Conan. You know, it's Conan. The guys in the army buy that. You know.
God, I wish when I was on it, it was the opposite, dude. Like the fans of Conan were so they were organized in their hate. They literally had a message board where they were planning ways to try to get me fired. They just hated, and they have a very specific idea. I mean, but like the pedigree to the Conan book, like artistically, is amazing, right? So like, and then you get me coming on, and you're just like, what the fuck's this guy doing? So
you know, things can change too, because I remember when Zaffino did that issue of Conan.
Yeah,
an issue of the black and white Conan. You know, George Zaffino did an issue.
Yeah.
And it got a lot of hate. And supposedly even one of the guys at one of the heads at Marvel looked at it and go like, "What the fuck happened? Did they get bad printing or whatever?" He had at that point, Jorge's style has started going to being even more kind of brutal, right? And more,
And
he was like taking the razor and just ripping the shit out of the paper and putting white out on it and everything. It was really, now 20 years later, people look at it and go, "Oh my God,
he's a genius."
Right. Like there's all these young cats going, "Frank Robbins, this guy's fucking amazing." Right? When I was a kid, I always liked Frank Robbins, but a lot of people did not like that stuff. So 20 years
comics,
from now.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. No.
I was gonna say comics people like their comics to feel like their comics yesterday. And you know, like you have a lot of these artists every so often, like there's that expression, like, you know, you're on your right path when there's no path, right? Like there's nobody's done this shit before you. You might be onto something, right? And this guy was onto something. Like the world just had to catch up. It's a shame that in the moment. Now, I don't think that's the case with me. I didn't think I must look goofy to people.
Well, Mike, we have a million things to talk about, but we're running out of time. But
oh no,
I want to do things a little differently tonight. I want to cue up Steve, because now it's lightning round, question palooza time. So, Mike, you're on the clock. Steve Conley is going to ask you a burst of questions from the chat. You will give him quick answers.
All right.
There are no wrong answers.
You have the floor, Steve.
Top of the list, Bill O'Donnell on the YouTubes. Have you ever tried the Eon art boards?
Yes, they sent me some paper to test out. I thought it was good. I know Louis LaRosa loves them. I've also heard people that just were like, so I don't want to say who it was, but an inker was like, yeah, I'll just ink blue lines because I don't want to ink on that stuff. So to each their own. I like it though.
Cool. Thanks for the question, Bill. Duke Norick on YouTube. I know you're in the middle of fulfillment on OMG, but what else? What's the next? Sorry, let me try that again. What's the next Kickstarter gonna be? Life Studies Volume 2 or something else?
It's probably gonna be Life Studies Volume 2. I'd like to do Hysteria number 2. I have 6 pages penciled in the cover. It's just that it'll buy me time to finish. I don't like to kickstart things that I don't have mostly done. So if I do Life Study 2, that's already done, so I can kickstart that, and then it buys me time to finish Hysteria number 2.
And how are you doing fulfillment? You're packing it all up yourself?
Yeah, my wife helps me. She's a little more business minded, so she takes care. I do all the printing and organizing of like what we need, and then we break it up into all the tiers, and she packs them up and gets them out the door. She's very good at it for someone who does not give two shits about comics. She likes this process and does a great job at it. So most as of today, I think like 2/3 of the stuff is out. The only thing that's like being held up is like the remarks and the stuff I gotta like actually physically do something to.
That's awesome. Thanks for the question, Duke. Stunt Ken on the YouTube. Mike, love how Hysteria is looking. It looks like you and you're really enjoying yourself. The mainstream stuff is good too. Hysteria just looks like you're having a great time and you let loose.
Yes, thank you, man. I appreciate that. And it's true. Yeah, I'm definitely like it's tickling a different part of the brain that like I miss, and it's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Stunt Ken. A 2-part question from JRD, starting with working on an iPad. Do you still work standing up all day?
That's a good question because I don't have a way to prop up. So there's different arms and stuff you can buy to use a tablet. I can't. So I've been having to tilt my desk back, and I either like I have this. I'm sitting on it now. I have this kind of like a drawing stool. It's not a true chair, and then I've been having either to do that or I'm sort of standing over. So I don't have a good workflow for that, unfortunately. I'd love to get something like I considered an actual like a door, and that sounds weird. I had a friend that made an easel out of an old door back in art school, and I thought of having an old door and like literally making it into like putting a ledge on it, so I could put the tablet and draw standing up on it. But we'll see.
And JRD followed that up with how are the back end knees?
They're still, knock wood, okay. I mean, at the end of the day, you're sore a little bit, but so far so good.
The standing helps?
Yeah, for me. I mean, I've had a standing desk probably going on 15 years or so. Probably more than that, actually. I'll have to ask my wife because she got me this old drafting table that goes fully vertical, and it helps. I'm not hunched over all day onto the and it also goes back to art school. Like all of our figure drawing, figure painting is all done standing at an easel, so it just felt like a natural way to work. And I have back injuries from working in factories and playing football and sports like that, stuff like that, like playing sports. But doing this has made it easier. Now it is rough on the knees, so you have to worry about things like shoes and support and that kind of
Do
shit.
you have one of those rubber mats?
I don't. I have a like one of those rolly chair mats over top of a rug, but I'm replacing my sneakers like a runner. Like it's like every 6 months or something, because you can almost tell. Like I'll start to notice, just like if you ever ran regularly, you can kind of tell when your shoes are going like they're time to replace because your heels start to hurt first, and then your ankles and up into your knees. So I'm having to replace shoes pretty often because of working standing.
Thanks for the questions, JRD. Duke coming back with another one. Do you prefer to work traditionally or digitally? Does your answer change if you're doing pencils or inks?
Yes, I like penciling traditionally. I know. I know this is just a me thing. I don't know why. I tend to get very stiff when I'm penciling digitally. I'm much more loose and just nutso when I'm doing it traditionally. So I prefer that. I'd rather ink traditionally. It's only been recently that it makes sense with Hysteria because it just works. For a lot of reasons, I'm able to like do stuff that I probably would take twice as long if I did it traditionally. But yeah.
Thanks for the other question, Duke. And Stunt Ken with another one here. We got Mike. Aside from hip hop, are you using other non-comic mediums, cinema, photography, etc., to expand on your approach for Hysteria?
Yes and no. I've been looking at a lot more animation production for Hysteria, but I'm trying to be real careful not to take in stuff that will muddy the waters of the book. Like I really want this thing to look a certain way, and so I'm paranoid of like looking at something that's too strong and you can't help but like like and you put in an ingredient that's just like way too much and it takes over everything. So I try not to. I am looking at a lot of old photos from Puerto Rico and the Caribbean to get a sense of like what the place felt like. And that's probably been the most helpful. So a lot of photographic stuff and old, like you'll see little clips of films from old travel videos or not videos, travel films from the Caribbean. And so I'm looking at a lot of that.
That's great. Thanks again, Stunt Ken. We have they keep coming in.
Sorry, Steve.
No, that's great. Let's say from Don Gomez on YouTube. How hard was it to keep deadline on a big title like Batman? Love your work, by the way.
Thank you. It is tricky, especially with something like Batman. It's kind of a tentpole. Like if Batman's late, then it affects half dozen other books. So you have to be pretty disciplined about making sure that you hit certain goals. In a perfect world, you're working on it well before needed at the printers, so they allow for more time. But often, you'll hit a point where you just need to say, I need to do a page and a half or 2 pages or whatever it's going to take to finish this book, come hell or high water, or just be upfront. Lately, what I'll do now is instead of saying I need to draw 2 pages a day, I'll just say, look, I need help. Can we bring somebody in? Because I don't want to compromise what this looks like anymore, which is what I used to do in the first half of my career. I would just burn through pages just to hit deadlines. And then I did a lot of books that I wasn't proud of. So yeah, it's difficult, but that's monthly books. There's no avoiding that. That's great.
To touch on something Mike always said, just keep them informed. Just stay in touch. That's great. Thanks for the question, Dom. He's got a second one from Dom. What's the point of spotting blacks in the background of panels, in your opinion?
It gives you something to compose what's going on in the foreground, right? Like if you're going to have something that is, so you have a figure that's predominantly white and you need it to stand out, it's just easier to plan on where you're going to place blacks behind it. Think of, say a figure that's all white on one side, black on the other because of the lighting. You want to be careful to plan ahead. If you put all black on the shadow side, you might lose a lot of the figure. So you want to plan for spotting your blacks on the other opposite side. You're just looking for contrast and readability. So, and every part of your panel from corner to quarter should matter. So you want to plan ahead.
Great question, Dom. Okay. Duke Nark with a hat trick. How's the image book coming along? Anything you can tell us about it?
I have been writing it for the better part of a year. It's one of those things that we thought, Rick and I, when I was going to do it under Rick's giant generator thing, we thought, well, we'll try to bang out a story in a few weeks, because I had stuff already sort of cooking. And Rick is very, he's worked in a lot of like writers' rooms and done his own books, and he is very just, the guy generates ideas like no one I know. And we were just fighting, not like in a negative way, but just like fighting it through ideas, right? His philosophy is like, you come with an idea, I come with an idea, whoever's is the best wins. And we did that for a while, and we had some issues where there's no hard feelings, but we just like couldn't figure out a way to make this work in a way that we were both happy with it. So since then, I've been writing on my own with a buddy of mine, editing. His name is Ivan Brandon, and my daughter, Maria. Yeah. And so we've been just fighting through the thing. Ivan's been good in that his mantra is like, look, you can't follow up a book like Batman with something that's just like done by the numbers. So it's still in the writing stage. I probably shouldn't share too much other than it's probably a lot darker than anything you'd expect from me. Yeah. Let's leave it there.
That's great.
Say less.
Thanks again, Duke. We've got 4 questions left. These are the best questions. These are the ones that brace yourself. El Jamal says, where do you get the sound effects for Hysteria from?
I found an online dictionary. So what he's referring to is the original Hysteria from '99 always had Japanese sound effects, which everybody thought was really dumb at the time. Yeah, I know. It gave people a lot of stuff to complain about. But I would look, back then there wasn't a lot of manga, so you found stuff that was not translated, and I was just like, that looks like a gunshot. I need a gunshot. Copy that. Now we have internet, and I found an online resource that is very detailed in terms of like, it's a whooshing sound, but more like a whoosh of like something flying through the air, and it's very specific. So I will just literally like read a dictionary kind of entries for the right sound effects in Hysteria.
Fantastic.
And like squeaky butt.
Their sound effects are so much better than ours. I am shocked at how nuanced they can be. It's like they really will have like instead of just wham, it's like a sound of punching, but like that of a snowball hitting a cake that's been sitting on a windowsill. Like, I just made
awesome.
Sorry, but they are very specific. Like, it's great. It's great.
That's awesome. JRD, 3 more to go. JRD, quick, how are the pups?
Very good. They're pissed off because it's like 5 here. So we haven't done our daily walk in 3 days, and they're like really, really, really annoyed with me. But the first day of the storm, I went out with Archie, which is like we have a big sheepdog that's like 80 pounds, and he's like a year and a half old. And he either the ice or something stuck to his foot and made it like he kind of cut it, and he just stopped walking. So we sat down and waited for someone to pick us up. He's fine. It just messed his paw up a little bit enough to like scare me. So I haven't walked them since. But they're just supposed to be. And we're up to 4 now. We have we have this sheepdog Archie. We have a sheepdog poodle mix named Odie. We have the pit bull Magnus, who is having some funny. That doesn't matter. And then we rescued another one, a teacup Yorkie, who is a weird addition to the family. Like, I was walking down the street with these 260 pounds worth of dog, and people were like, "What the?" what is going on? Because she is tiny. She's 5 pounds. Like it's laughing.
That's lovely.
I can feel Jamar judging me. Look at him.
I was reading the chat.
You know, the salt
Yeah.
on the street can burn your dog's paws.
Yeah, and thought I was doing a good job of avoiding it. I'm wondering if we're still in the city, so it could have been a piece of glass.
Right.
Or I'm worried that it could have been like ice that stuck. Maybe his paw was just wet enough.
Right.
Kind of, so because I couldn't find any glass in his paw. But yeah, he seems to be.
Second to last question. Talking about the stress over trying to draw the Spider-Man's webbing correctly. Jamal, if you were drawing the FF, would the thing's rocks always have to be the same?
I have drawn the thing, and I've come up with I realized that they can't all be the same because you have to. In my head, you have to alter them around the face or places where they bend, so that it makes some sort of sense. I'm also the thing shouldn't have teeth guy. Just because that's what Kirby did, and that just feels right. So yeah,
that's great.
Oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And Kirby never drew him. He's a design.
Yeah.
Right. He's a design. So the rocks did whatever he needed to make that expression.
Correct.
Right. It was not like there was always 4 across the ridge, that's why it always looked cool because it was like the perfectly abstracted character for a guy who liked to draw abstractly.
Yeah, he is just. Everybody talks about the design of Spider-Man, and I get it; it's a classic thing. But to me, the Thing is probably a more iconic design. There's something about him that just, I don't know. It's. I love that.
Well, we got a last question. First of all, everyone, thank you so much for such great questions. These were fantastic. But our last question, and take as much time as you'd like with this one, Mike. Admit it. How jealous are you of Jamar's flowing locks of hair?
You know what? It's a beautiful thing. Jamar's always had enviable locks for sure, man. I mean, it's speaking of a perfect design, my man's an icon. Look at him. You can't. That's why you see the old sticker like I met Jamar. You can see that from across the con floor. No, yeah, I know that dude.
I already got one of these. Damn it!
Yeah.
Thank you for that great question, Patrick.
Checks in the mail. So before we run out of time, because we're taking you to the limit, Mike Hawthorne, because you're that special.
If my phone dies, I apologize.
That's all right. Well, that'll be the way we end it. We'll just
Okay.
kind of go to black. That'll be great. I want to give you a chance to talk about your campaigns and just kind of like how you've been kind of making moves on top of doing comics the last couple of years.
Yeah, Kickstarter's been a big thing for us. I think I'm up to like 13 Kickstarters. I always wanted to have a life raft just because every time things go well in comics, it made me nervous, and I was always afraid of like not having an escape hatch.
Sure.
So, and I'm glad I did, because even though things have been, very good, it's allowed me to make a lot of books that I just wouldn't have been able to do, so I'm grateful. I'm going to lean on it. I think in the future, if I can avoid taking a gig, I'd like to do, if it were a perfect world, I would do a Kickstarter at least once a quarter, which is, we could easily do, except for, hang-ups like on like stuff that we can't control, printing delays or whatever, especially with the upcoming administration. I don't know how that's going to affect, if there's a trade war, how it's going to affect paper and all the stuff that we depend on. But yeah, I'd like to do a Kickstarter. If I really, really, really had it my way, I'd probably do more of these quick starters where they go, 2 weeks or something, or 10 days, and then do a issue of Hysteria every other month. But we'll see. I mean, like, it's one of those things I'm hoping to avoid taking an actual gig to do this thing for a while, but everybody's got bills. So, and then obviously the image book, if that goes well, I mean,
Uh-oh. This might be the end of his phone.
The phone went. The phone
Phone
went.
died.
That's a great derp face too.
We could get that off the screen for now.
Well, I'll keep an eye on it just to see if he comes back. But yeah, just all that said, for some of you guys that don't know, that Hawthorne has that's a very fantastic social media presence, and I know he doesn't talk about it a lot, but he's really active on Insta, and his Patreon campaign is kind of the one to be studied, I think, at this point, as he gives so much of himself, and I'm not being cheeky. Like if you're one of his patrons, he is going to bless you with stuff, right? And you're going to get more than your money's worth. One thing is that I really love about what we're doing, him and I, is that we have a shared podcast called It Ain't Hard to Tell that we do every 2 weeks. So if you follow him or you follow me, you get the same thing, where it's kind of like a live AMA that we've been doing. I think this is the 122nd one we've done. Yeah, I mean, there's a rich archive there too. And I'm so excited, like I said at the beginning of this, that Mike and us, we go back a long time. Actually, Mike and I are kind of like in the same class. Like we kind of like came into comics at the same time. And Hysteria is where he started self-publishing. And I'm a giant fan. I know.
What year was that?
99. I think it was 98 or 99. And wow. I know Jamal is a big fan of Hysteria. And kind of Mike and Steve, as we talked about before, that all of us cartoonists wear different coats, right? Like you are who you are underneath the coat. But some people like Mike's puffer coat, which has Batman attached to it. Or what about this fancy vest where it's the Phantom? So some people like different parts of what you've done over the years. And as proud as I've been of all of Mike's mainstream successes, I always want to see more Hysteria. So I'm really.
I even inked some Hysteria over him.
Like when he was doing the image Hysteria, I think.
Was that the image of Hysteria?
It's possible.
That was fun. It was fun stuff to ink.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is so kinetic and fantastic, and I think especially because he's doing a lot of this through Kickstarter and his Patreon, that this is kind of like what we all set out to do. If we can do our own, create our own work, and have the fans lift it up and carry it, that's fantastic. So if you're on the fence, you're like, oh, but I really like Deadpool. That's great. But like, go get Hysteria so he can make more Hysteria.
It sort of reminds me of. I was thinking while we were talking. It reminds me a lot of our late friend Mike Waringo, who was doing the mainstream stuff, but then he was doing Telos, which he really loved, right? Mm-hmm. And even the whole like realism or detail versus cartoony, and like some people like, well, that kind of cartoony thing's okay on this, but on this it can't be. We want. I know Mike felt that sometimes too, that there was that sort of that pressure where you're on certain books. I think you can be more cartoony on Spider-Man, right? Mm-hmm. But like not on the Punisher,
right? You can't have a bouncy Punisher book,
right? Although ironically, somebody like Michael Golden, who has a very cartoony aspect to his work. But when he would draw the Punisher, and he would draw the machine gun like Russ Heath, he'd do this amazing, like everything is just so. But yeah, it's funny because fans have preloaded, I think, certain expectations of what they want the art to look like on a book, and if you deviate too much from that, then they're like, which is weird because I think the younger you are, and the more you probably like anime, the less that is a problem.
Right.
Yeah. The chat's really making me laugh. That was great. And thinking about Mike, shout out to our buddy Mike. El Jamal says, "Tell us it's amazing. We need more Mikes making their own comics." I think that says something. And even to what we were talking about a little earlier about kind of like always kind of coming up against this pressure doing these mainstream things. I remember when Ringo, when they made that Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man title for him. Don't get it twisted with that Disney thing they're doing. Mike did that first. And when that book started, they were in the middle of the Iron Spider
right
thing, and he was like, "Can I just draw Spider-Man? Why I gotta draw this?" You know what I mean? So like that's real. That's a very real thing.
Yeah, I mean that's how I felt like on Batman. It's like, wow, boy, I get to draw Batman, but
yeah,
I didn't get to draw Batman until like actually like the end of my run on Batman.
You're drawing as Bats, right?
Right, yeah. So I was drawing, Bruce Wayne training or whatever, but I really only got to draw Batman at the very end, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Mike, for somebody who's taking on a gig like that, and beyond it, just because as the fans would go, "Ooh, you get to draw fill in the blank," but there's also a thing as a cartoonist, you're like, "Oh, I really want to, sharpen my teeth against this." Right, and then it's almost kind of like a little bit of a rug pull.
Yeah, I mean,
jobs, right?
Yeah, I mean, because you as an artist who's a fan of this stuff, right? Because that's why we do it, right? So you have like your own dream and your own expectation of like, well, if I ever got to draw, Batman, boy, I'd really like to do this thing, but that's usually not the case because they bring you in and then you kind of, well, this is what we're doing, so we'd like you to do it. If you want to do it, this is what we're doing, right? Like I would have not preferred to draw as Bat, right? I just would have preferred to draw like regular Batman comics, right? But well, that's where they were with it, so you take the gig, which financially was a very good thing. My art heart was not happy, right? Not as happy.
Wasn't there a period where the Thing wore a helmet?
Right.
Someone got stuck drawing the Fantastic Four with Thing wearing a helmet the whole time.
Right. Yeah, he had like a big like a bowl over his head. Yeah,
a circle template.
You're right. Oh, well, then he was spiky for a while. I think
Mm-hmm.
he was like spiky Thing for a while. So
great.
Yeah. It's it's like what you want to do is probably based upon really what you read as a kid. Like that's what made you fall in love with that stuff, right? So, like I said, for me, the penultimate Batman was what Neil Adams was doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I enjoyed, Dark Knight or whatever, but that was not my Batman. Right. So it's like when you get to play with the character, you want to, that's the way you want to play with the character. But, when you're working on corporate stuff, that's not always the way that it works.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to sort of, you take the opportunity and then you hope that opportunity leads to another opportunity. But actually the whole business is structured in a way that's very different, that it's actually better for you in the long run to do your own thing, because then you actually have something that you can control, right? That's the payoff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Deadpool may sell better, but if your thing sells as third as well as Deadpool, you will actually do better.
Yeah. And I think that's a kind of like, I don't want to say a hard lesson for fans, but even though all of us who've done, work all over the map, And then you'll find some fan excitement. They're more excited when you do a Marvel thing. You know what I mean? And I think for us, especially when making creator and stuff, like you own that, you thought that up, it's all yours. I want you guys to be as excited about this as I am and not go, but you just drew Colossus. How cool is that? Yes, that's cool, but I don't own Colossus. You know what I'm saying? Our good buddy Samax. What up, Samax? I'm gonna put you on screen. Shout out to Samax, amen. One of my favorite arcs of Black Panther was Mike Manley's work on Enemy of the State. Huzzah, Mike Manley.
Yeah, and that, again, that was a very weird thing because they decided to put me on it. And I did those couple of issues, and people either liked it or hated it, right? There was like, there doesn't seem to be like, well, you know, it's like, because it was a very different style than Mark Texeria, right?
Right.
It was a very, you know, sort of animated, more cartoony style. Not that I couldn't have done a more realistic style, but Jimmy and Joe liked what I was doing with the cartoony stuff and thought, well, let's try that, right? So
cool.
You know, it's you know, comics used to have more throw something against the wall and see what it sticks, right? That's for most of comics history, that's what it was. When you start getting into the direct market, it starts to change a little bit, because then they're like, well, you know, we're not selling to a general audience, right? We're selling to the direct market audience, which is a much more particular kind of audience. When it was just sold in 7-Elevens and newsstands or whatever, you know, some kid might pick it up. Oh, that's cool, or whatever. Like, there was not all the pressure also on the editorial, right? Because it would take you months to find out what your book sold.
Wow, right. The numbers. I forgot about that part.
Right. They weren't ordering and telling you to print this much. Like, here's the catalog, here's your numbers. They would print, send stuff out, and then they'd get returns.
Yeah.
Right?
Those covers.
So, completely different, you know, business model. So that's why they would do stuff like, what's popular? Oh, Planet of the Apes. Let's make a Planet of the Apes kind of comic, right?
All right, guys. I think we're gonna put a pin in this. This was a lot of fun tonight. We lost Mike Hawthorne to the digital divide.
To the winter vortex. Did he text you? Is he?
No, he's out. But you know, we'll see him in the hinterlands. Looking really stylish, Steve Conley, with his glasses. Last thing, El Jamal says for Mike, without the direct market, I would have discovered Manley on Quasar.
That's true. Although I think Quasar at that time was actually also sold on the newsstand. That was where you could still, because the 7-Eleven right up here by me still at that time still sold comics.
Had the spinner rack, right.
Yeah, I've actually had a lot of people tell me, you know, like those books or Dark Hawk, stuff like that. Those are books that kids still could get on the stands, or the grandma would buy them or whatever. And, you know, now just completely not the case.
Yeah, it's a whole different animal, isn't it? So, all right, guys, we're going to sign off for tonight. Hey, Mike, do you want to tell us about our guest next week? Donato's going to be on, right?
Next week, we're going to have Donato Giancola, the amazing fantasy artist, who's probably really well known for most people for doing these amazing Lord of the Rings paintings. Really just a fantastic fantasy illustrator. So, which we covered in Draw back in print, but we're going to have him on and talk about his process, and also talk about what's going on with a lot of the AI and legal stuff that's going on right now. That's a lot of us working in the business are having to deal with and are very concerned with. So I think it'll be a very good program on both accounts.
Well, that sounds great. I can't wait. Can't wait. Staying up late Wednesdays at 8. You know what it is.
Don't be late.
Don't be late. That's right. All right, you guys. Thanks so much. That was real fun for our buddy Mike Hawthorne, who's in the Matrix somewhere.
Who's looking at his battery going, still charging, the little flashing Apple still flashing.
Yeah, it'll come on at like 3 in the morning.
Blink.
Damn it, I missed it. For my co-host and myself, this has been Pencil to Pencil. We had a great time. Guys, I would be remiss if we signed off. I did not tell you to, before we run out of space, wash those curvy hands. And put on some gloves, for Christ's sakes. It's cold outside.
It is.
All right, good night. Stay warm. See you next
Good night,
time.
everybody.
Good night. It won't end.
I'll end you.
I'll make it